Did Terron Armstead just save the Miami Dolphins in free agency with what he did today? We're going to break it down on today's show. Let's get after it. You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, February the 25th. I am your host, Mike Oliva, flying solo today. And boy, do we have a ton of things to talk about on today's show. Mike McDaniel met with the media at 11 a.m. on Tuesday in Indianapolis at the Scouting Combine, and he said a lot. We have a lot of stuff to go over. And then there's a ton of news on Terron Armstead, as some news broke later in the afternoon after Mike McDaniel spoke to he sort of addressed his future in some ways with what he did and the gesture he did by agreeing to go to the vet minimum. So we're going to talk about that, the fallout from that, what this means. We're going to forecast forward and also go over everything Mike McDaniel said. It wasn't just stuff about Hill and Armstead. There was so much information packed in his media session. But before we get to the news, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, Caneswear. Everyone go to caneswear.com. That's right, caneswear.com for the best Miami Dolphins apparel anywhere. If you're a Dolphins fan and you want a hoodie, you want a hat, you want a t-shirt, you want a polo, you want something for your car, something for your house, anything Miami Dolphins, go to caneswear.com. They also have stuff for the Miami Heat, your Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. They got stuff for the Miami Marlins, and of course the Miami Hurricanes, also Florida and Florida State as well, and all of the college teams in the state of Florida. Caneswear.com is the best, but especially if you're a fan of the Dolphins, caneswear.com. They ship internationally as well. Also, if you haven't signed up for it yet, why haven't you? Go to Dolphins Talk Extra. That's patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. We have bonus podcasts about the Dolphins and not about the Dolphins. We have podcasts about pro wrestling, the NBA. We're going to have one soon starting up about Major League Baseball and, television shows. And we have contests where we give away prizes. Soon I'm going to have a contest up where we give away a Tyreek Hill mini bobblehead doll. And if you're a member of Dolphins Talk Extra, you're automatically entered. There's no trivia contest or anything you have to do. You are automatically entered. So if you sign up for Dolphins Talk Extra, you have a chance to win a brand new Tyreek Hill mini bobblehead doll just by being a member. We have a private message board. We're also going to have a watch along soon or watch along might not be the right term, where we go over an old game. We all watch an old game, and then we're going to do a podcast talking about it. So we have a lot of things happening at Dolphins Talk Extra. $3 a month. Can't beat the price. It's really just $3 a month, and you get all that. The private message board, the extra podcast alone are worth it, plus the contest. And we're going to have a March Madness contest as well, where we give away some prizes. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Also, one last thing before I get to the news real quick. If you didn't hear the announcement on Monday on social media, coming in March, a new podcast here at DolphinsTalk.com, the free version, with myself and the great Dougley Durong. Everyone knows Dougley Durong, the Miami Dolphins YouTuber. He and I are teaming up, joining forces, and we will do a weekly podcast here at DolphinsTalk.com as part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. So be on the lookout for that. Myself and Dougley Durong with a new podcast venture that you can hear right here at DolphinsTalk.com. All right, let's get to the news. So, Tyreek Hill, let's start there. Drew Rosenhaus, Sunday night when he did his television spot on WSVN with Josh Moser, would not confirm that Tyreek Hill had surgery, as there was a social media post that Tyreek put out showing his wrist in a cast. Well, when Mike McDaniel was asked about this on Tuesday at his media session, he confirmed Tyreek had surgery on his wrist to repair ligament damage. This means that Tyreek Hill will now miss most, if not all, the offseason, Mike McDaniel said. Mike McDaniel said he will not resume catching footballs until near training camp. So when it comes to OTAs or mini camps or those working sessions on the side when the players meet up at like a high school field, Tyreek, will not be participating in that as he has to heal up from his wrist surgery. So we got some clarity on Tyreek Hill. And again, he will not resume catching footballs until late summer near training camp is what Mike McDaniel said. In other Tyreek Hill news, Joe Rose at 560 WQAM, the voice of the Dolphins for many years, he does the games on the radio, said on Monday that he's been told from multiple people that Tyreek Hill is the person responsible for getting Wes Welker fired. Wes Welker, the Miami Dolphins wide receivers coach who was let go after this past season. Well, I cannot confirm or deny that because I don't know. And it wasn't something I had heard, but Joe Rose is obviously more tuned in than me, more locked in than me with certain people. He said that's what he's been told from multiple people. And I'll just say, if it's true, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked. Joe Rose had some strong words, actually. He said, don't blame Wes for the Miami Dolphins passing game being a failure in 2024, because it was. Don't blame Wes for the Miami Dolphins passing game unable to beat two deep looks in this Mike McDaniel offense in 2024, because they couldn't. He said Wes Welker's wide receivers blocked. They played hard. They weren't the problem. So he was a little peeved that, from what he's been told, Tyreek was the reason that Wes Welker got fired. Now, Mike McDaniel, when he spoke to the press today, was asked about this specifically. Did Tyreek Hill get Wes Welker fired? I didn't expect any head coach, let alone Mike McDaniel, say, yep, he came to me, he complained, and I fired Wes that's just unrealistic. What Mike McDaniel said was this: I could see why one would come to that conclusion. However, it wasn't at all. He went on to say later in his comments that why he let go of Wes Welker, it was motivated in things that were much beyond what happened with Tyreek at the end of the season. So Mike McDaniel is saying that he fired Wes for multiple reasons, and it wasn't because of Tyreek Hill. Everyone's going to believe what they want to believe. We'll see. I mean, ain't nothing to see. He's gone, I guess, but Tyreek Hill might have been the reason Wes Welker is no longer the wide receivers coach in Miami, because I tend to believe Joe Rose in this matter, because Joe Rose, again, he's employed by the Dolphins. He does the radio for all the games, and he, what he said, you don't usually hear a company employee come out so strongly and say something like that, which is just a quote unquote rumor. If it's news, it's news, but a quote unquote rumor. And he's pretty much said, this is what I've been told. This is what I'm hearing. And he had some other harsh words as well about Mike McDaniel, saying, he's got to be a real coach. He just can't be everyone's friend. He can't be the substitute teacher that everyone sort of takes advantage of as a head coach. He's got to be a stronger voice in the room and get this team back, win back this team that he's clearly lost. So Joe had some strong comments. If you didn't hear it, you can go to the website, DolphinsTalk.com. I have the audio clip up there, and I also have it up on my Twitter or X feed at DolphinsTalk if you want to actually hear Joe Rose in his own words. And you can hear he was not happy with what he was saying. And, he pulled no punches. Let's just say that. All right, let's get to the Terron Armstead news. So at 11 a.m., Mike McDaniel, when asked about Armstead, said the team is operating as if Armstead will not play in 2025. He said Armstead was still making he was still contemplating things, but time is a factor here, which that's a very strong statement from Mike McDaniel, saying we're operating as if he won't be here, and saying that, Armstead still hasn't made a call on if he wants to play, if he wants to retire and stuff, but we're moving on. Because that's code for him saying he might want to play in 2025, but we as the Dolphins, we've decided we're moving on without him, if you read between the lines. That's what Mike McDaniel essentially said in code. Like, Armstead might want to come back and play. We've moved on, which is big news, because there's been a lot of question marks around what Miami will do with two guys in particular, and Armstead and Chubb. They have very hefty contracts, and both guys have a long list of injuries. So that was the news at 11. All the reporters ran with it, local, national. Armstead's not expected back in Miami 2025. If they did it as a cut pre-June 1st, it would have given him $4 million roughly under the cap to use in March. If they did a post-June 1st, it would have gave him, I want to say 19 million? No. 12 million, something like that, post-June 1st, so they couldn't use it in March, but Miami had moved on. Fast forward to about 1:45 p.m. in the afternoon. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, he comes out with a report saying that Terron Armstead is taking his $28 million contract and reducing it down to the vet minimum. This would give the Miami Dolphins salary cap space during the start of free agency, and it would buy him time to make his decision on if he wants to play, not play, and his future. Because Miami, they were going to cut him in the next week, whether they cut him pre-June 1st or post-June 1st. Now, with Armstead reducing his contract from $28 million to the vet minimum, which is only $1.2 million, roughly, rounding off here, Miami doesn't need to cut him. They can let Armstead stay under contract to the Dolphins while he weighs his options and he decides what he wants to do. And this helps the Dolphins so much. I almost can't put it into words. This gives Miami, once again, rounding off, no exact numbers out yet, roughly $14 million more in salary cap space. So it's huge. It helps them. It pretty much solves a lot of their issues with the cap. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So Miami, as of this morning, was roughly $1.5 million under the cap. You now add on roughly 14 more million. They are roughly $15.5 million under the cap now, and I will stop saying the word roughly. So they're about $15.5 million under the cap with this news of what Armstead is doing. And of course, fans of the Dolphins ran to social media, thanked Armstead. This is great. Oh my God, this is amazing. And it is. It truly, truly is. But let's break down what this means, though. Terron Armstead is probably going to retire, or he will now be a post-June 1st cut by the Dolphins. I find it highly unlikely that Armstead is going to play in 2025 for the Dolphins at $1.2 million. So even if Armstead wants to play in 2025, he meets with his family, he thinks it over for a few weeks, and he goes, you know what? I still think I got 1 year left in me. I want to play. I think the Dolphins are going to say, great, we totally understand. We're still going to cut you. Because what Mike McDaniel said at 11 a.m. was a sign that they've already made their decision. They're moving on from Armstead. And why wouldn't they? They drafted Patrick Paul in round 2 last year. As I've said on podcasts all last week, he has to play. Otherwise, it's a wasted pick in round 2. Patrick Paul wasn't selected to be a guy to come off the bench and play sporadically. Well, Armstead is, hurt, then he's healthy, then he's hurt again, then he's healthy. What Mike McDaniel said at 11 a.m., it was like he was given truth serum. We've moved on from Armstead. So what Armstead did at 1:45 in the afternoon is great. It helps the Dolphins. Great news, but Miami's already made their call here. So it's just a matter of, will Armstead retire, or will they release him with a post-June 1st designation now at his new contract, which is a minimum at approximately $1.2 million. So I understand the move, and this is what Miami had to do. Armstead cannot be counted on week to week. I know he played in 15 games this year. If you look at the box score, he really didn't, because in 2 of those games, he took himself out early, like in the first quarter. He truly only played in 13. I think last year, or I should say 2 years ago now, he played in 10. And I think the year before that, it was 13, but he took himself out early again. So it was roughly around like 12 or 10 there too. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and not seeing a new result. And Armstead, elite when he plays, just doesn't play enough to justify the contract. And Miami has to get younger overall. They have to be a younger team. And they took Patrick Paul in round 2 for this reason specifically. So this isn't me bashing Armstead. It's just stating facts. And this is great that he took this pay cut, so to speak. But really, to me, it's a sign that he's going to retire. I'd be very, very surprised if he's going to come back and play now. to me, this is a sign that he's like 90% sure he's going to retire. Let me redo my contract, give Miami salary cap flexibility to do what they want in March. And if I do have a change of heart and if I want to play, they will either, if they want me, which I don't think they will, but crazier things have happened, we can rework the deal again. So because he ain't playing for 1.2 million. There's no chance, no way in hell that guy is going to step on a field and play in any game for 1.2 million. But if he wants to come back, and if Miami wants him, they can rework the deal again and give him however much is fair market value, or they will just release him, which I think will happen anyways, and then he can sign with whoever else and work out terms of that deal with that team. So, well, fans of Dolphins should be very thankful, and we all should be very thankful for what Terron Armstead, what he did today. Let's not go nuts here and think he's now going to stay in Miami and play for 1.2 million, or he's going to be a second-string offensive tackle. That's not happening. What he did today, what the best thing for this Miami Dolphins organization is for Armstead to be gone and Patrick Paul to be our new starter. Armstead is nothing more than a progress blocker right now. It's Patrick Paul's time. So I think Armstead was going to be gone one way or another, but now he's gone in literally the best way possible, it appears, and he helped out the Miami Dolphins greatly, which fans of the Dolphins should say thank you to him because it really does help in their salary cap situation. All right, before I get to the final part of today's show, a quick shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Podbean, Podchaser, or one of the other hundreds of platforms are on, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit it. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. Smash it. Also hit the subscribe button to the channel. And if you want to put up comments in the chat area, in the comments section on YouTube, I will try my best to respond to each and every one of them. Whether you think what I'm saying is right, whether you have a different point of view, all feedback is welcome. So put up the comments in the YouTube chat. Also, if you leave a comment on our Apple Podcast page, as long as a 5-star rating, got to be a 5-star rating there, I'll read it on the air and give you a shout out as well. But subscribe to the channel. I have a show coming up on Wednesday with a special guest you're not going to want to miss. And we're going to have more shows here pretty much, I don't want to say every day, but almost every day as we get through this free agency period, which now with all this extra money is going to be more exciting for the Miami Dolphins as they look to add a few players here to help. All right, final topic on today's shows. Let's go over everything else Mike McDaniel said. Now, I just told you what he said about Armstead and Hill. He spoke about a lot of other things. And before I get to it, I want to say this. I was a little surprised by Mike McDaniel's media session today. Surprised in a good way. He was more open and honest than he usually is when talking to the press. He didn't tap dance around questions. He still had a few word salad type answers, but for the most part, he was very direct. And it got me wondering. I'm wondering if this job is sort of beating him down to the point where it caused him to grow up a little bit. You know, Mike as a personality, everyone loves. You know, he's funny. He's very relatable to. He seems like a nice, good-hearted man. But as a head coach, we've seen it with our eyes. We've heard the stories. He comes off very immature. And what I saw today at this media session was a grown-ass man up at the podium answering questions and not trying to find the joke or find the funny one-liner. So this might be something for the good here, and a shift in his tone while he was answering questions seemed pretty obvious to me today. So maybe he's starting to grow up a little bit because that's what he really needs to do. Because he never really talks about players' injuries and stuff, but he did not hesitate for a second when he was asked about Tyreek Hill. He was like, yep, wrist surgery, ligament, here's a time frame for his return. Like he never does that ever. Probably once, but he's never done that once before. That was like, I think the first or second thing he was asked right out of the gate. Boom, open, honest, here you go. So I like it. Let's hope this continues. It might just be one day. I don't know, but let's hope this continues from Mike McDaniel. Two things overall. I was very surprised there wasn't one question about Tua. He answered a lot of questions. Not one of the reporters asked him anything about Tua. He is your starting quarterback. He did end the year injured with a hip injury, to where even if they did find a way to get into the playoffs, he still wasn't playing. No one asked him about Tua. Also, not one question about the new special teams coach. Since Mike last met with the media at the end of your press conference, they hired a new special teams coordinator, and not one question about that. So I just found that a little surprising. Those were two topics I would have liked to hear him speak on today, but maybe another point here down the road in the coming weeks. When he was asked about Javon Holland, he said, and I quote, "Javon has earned the right to go out and test the market," which, again, that is code. That is NFL code, I like to call it, for he ain't coming back. If a team or coach wants a player who's about to become a free agent, they will say something along the lines of, "We will do everything in our power to make sure he is," insert your team name, for a long time. So for Javon, it would be like, "We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that Javon Holland is part of the Miami Dolphins for many years and a long time." He did not say that. He said paraphrasing, he's earned the right to test free agency, which is code for he gone, he ain't coming back. They said the same thing about Wilkins. They said the same thing about Hunt. They say this about a lot of guys, and not just the Dolphins, various teams. That's how they sort of spin this. So any hope that you might have that Holland will be back in Miami in 2025, it ain't happening. They pretty much all but confirmed today that Holland, they're not even going to make a serious offer or any offer at all. He's gone with those words. And other great news, when he was asked about the need to invest in the offensive line, Mike McDaniel, again, very obvious. And, he didn't give the Chris Grier line, or also didn't co-sign the Chris Grier line of, "You're more worried about the offensive line than we are." No, he said the opposite. And I quote, "I think we have a tangible opportunity to improve that starts in free agency with a couple of guys that we have targeted that you think you can get a deal done with them. And that continues into the draft. I think it's a very good time to have some need. It's time for us to invest in that position, and excited to do it." Mike McDaniel saying he's excited to invest in the offensive line. We have a couple guys we have targeted in free agency. We think we can get a deal done with them. Oh my God. Is this the same Miami Dolphins? Is this the same Miami Dolphins where the past few years they've laughed at us, fans, media types? I say us. They've laughed. They've looked down at us. "You guys are more worried about the offensive line than we are. We're going to be fine." They go out there and invest nothing in guards. Last year, they let Connor Williams walk. They let Robert Hunt walk, and they promoted up Robert Jones. "You've stunk as a backup. Now you're going to start." Liam Eichenberg, "You've stunk as a backup. Now you're going to start." They just promoted bad players up, and now they're saying the opposite. They're being open. They're being honest. "We got guys we like in free agency we're going to target, and we think we can sign them." And that's going to roll over to the draft, where we will continue to invest in the offensive line. Someone woke up in Miami Gardens, and it's about damn time. Now, they got to follow through on this and sign the right guys. They got to make sure they don't overpay. They also have to make sure they don't overinvest. Look, you have Patrick Paul, you have Aaron Brewer, you have Austin Jackson. You need two starting guards, and yes, you need some depth. We don't need every pick in the draft to be an offensive lineman. We don't need to waste all of our salary cap money signing 3 or 4 offensive linemen, but they need 2 starters at guards, and they need depth. So kudos. It looks like someone finally woke up when it comes to the offensive line. So they have the right mindset. Check. Kudos. Great job. Now it comes down to the execution. We'll wait and see before we give them kudos on any execution. We have to see what they do. With only Devon Achane and Jaylen Wright as the 2 running backs on this roster as of today, Mike McDaniel said he is excited to grow the running back room by adding 2 or 3 new people. Now, that's obviously they have to add some people. So that's not really newsworthy. But, and I know fans of the Miami Dolphins probably don't want to hear this, but I think Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, if he's available, pick 13, I think there's a very real chance Miami could take him. And I know fans are saying, but we just took Achane. They're young. Why would you add another third running back? Because I think he's going to grade off so high, and all these general managers and everything they do to grade players, he's going to grade off so high. And I just think it's possible. And plus, you have to remember, Achane only has 2 years left on his deal. If you take Genti in round 1, you got him for 5 years cheap. 5. So that means you can start to prepare for life after Achane. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how these general managers think. They're thinking he can help us now, and in 3 years, when Achane wants a big payday, I don't have to give it to him. I already got his replacement. So that's how they think. But also, I think he's going to be a guy from all the scuttlebutt we're hearing, or I'm hearing at least, out of Indianapolis, that's going to grade out very high this draft process. Not necessarily this week at the Combine, because I don't even know if he's going to be there and what he will do and won't do. I don't even think he's going to run this week. I think, if I heard correctly, he's just going to maybe meet with teams, and he's going to do everything at his pro day, which is fine. But I think, don't be shocked if Miami did something wild at pick 13 and took this kid, because, look, I don't want it, but I'm just saying don't be shocked, because I do think there's a chance they might, because running backs, look, they have needs everywhere. I think some fans don't understand, who just think they got to fix the offensive line. Yes, they have to fix the offensive line. They have one safety under contract. They have one cornerback under contract you trust. One linebacker you trust. Zach Sealer's their only lineman right now under contract. Campbell is a free agent. Hand's a free agent. Jones is a free agent. They have no defensive linemen outside of, so they have needs everywhere. And I know that's why I wouldn't take a running back. But again, these guys, and when I say these guys, I mean general managers, love to just go off the draft grades. So don't be shocked if that happens. I'm not in favor of it. I don't think it's likely, but my jaw won't hit the floor if it does. Mike McDaniel was asked about the tush push. Is now there's been the Packers put in a request to have it banned. Some people love it. Some people don't love it. Mike McDaniel is pro tush push. He does not think it should be banned. He don't think teams should be something should be banned just because some teams are successful at it. I don't agree, but look, it's not going anywhere, the tush push. My whole thing is, since the tush push is there and it's available to everyone, you better have it as part of your playbook. And if you can't run it with your quarterback, like we can't because he has head injuries, run it with a tight end, run it with a wide receiver. Put someone under center who you can then put other players' hands up their ass and push them forward for a yard or two. And I think Miami needs to get this in their playbook, because it's a high percentage play that, if you can run it well, is anytime you get the 3rd and 1, anytime you get the 4th and 1, it's pretty much a cheat code to get automatic first down. Now, some teams don't run it well, but the teams that do, it's a cheat code and a huge advantage. So we'll see if Miami can find a way to run this play. It's just a challenge with Miami because they can't run it with the quarterback. So you have to find someone else to run it, which makes it a whole thing. Yeah, so that's a lot of it. But let me say this here in closing. The big takeaways here is all this information. This was a ton of information that was sort of thrown at fans of the Dolphins today, with Armstead, then Armstead with the contract a few hours later, with Holland, with, what he said about investing in the offensive line, everything going on with Hill. I want to if you take this information, let's forecast out what's going on here. Offensive line. Miami, I think, is going to, clearly what he's saying is there are veterans they like that they hope to sign. And right now, if you look at the Miami Dolphins offensive line, you have a right tackle, you have a left tackle, you have a center. If you sign 2 veterans in free agency, I'm going to assume at least one of them's a guard. The other one will probably be a guard, but he could be a backup swing tackle. But let's just assume they signed 2 guards. I don't see Miami drafting offensive line at pick 13 at that point, because now you're drafting depth. Now, they still need to take an offensive lineman or 2 in the draft, but you might be able to wait to rounds 4 and 5 to address it, because it's not as much of a pressing need. So if they sign 2 veteran guys in free agency who you can pencil in as starters, I think at pick 13, you don't have to take offensive line. And you can push the offensive line need till the middle rounds of the draft, maybe round 3, maybe round 4. It's not as much of a glaring need. So that's number one. So the fact they said that he said there's a couple guys they've targeted is great, because I think that helps their draft board come night 1, round 1. With Holland not returning, and he's not returning, folks, Miami needs to add 3 safeties. I mean, because the only one on the roster is Patrick McMorris, and he's never played in a game. And he was hurt the first 8 months of last year, or the first however many months of last year, where he wasn't even with the team on the practice field. When you need 3 safeties under a Anthony Weaver scheme where he plays 3 safeties at times, I expect Miami clearly to sign 1, most likely 2 safeties in free agency. But because you don't know what you have with Patrick McMorris, and even if you try to re-sign Elijah Campbell, he's more of a special teams guy than a safety at his core. I think taking a safety at pick either 13 or 48 is a very real possibility, because you can make the case that as we sit today, February 25th, the number 1 need on this team is safety. They literally have nobody, and you have to fill out pretty much the entire room. No offense to Patrick McMorris. So I think that's why if they can address the offensive line and free agency with proven veteran guys, with no growing pains coming here by taking a rookie, that opens up round 1, and I think it opens up round 1 and 2, really, and it makes adding a safety there a very real possibility, because I think that is their biggest need on this roster, period. So just something to keep in mind. I think with the draft, again, if they address the offensive line, it does open up round 1 where you can go tight end, you can go running back, safety, nose tackle. It just opens things up. So that's why I love that answer about the offensive line, because it does open up round 1 to literally fill whichever holes you still have after free agency. And for Miami, with the largest needs being being the secondary safety in particular and the defensive line, this draft is very deep at both positions. So I think Miami can really go into this draft taking best player available in round 1, no matter what the position, even if it's a tight end, whatever. And then after that, they're still going to have a lot of safeties on the board who can probably come in and contribute right away. Same on the defensive line. So this draft really does fall nice for Miami, because their needs, I saw there was a lot of reporting on Monday that this is a meat and potatoes draft, meaning there's not a lot of superstars in this draft or guys that they forecast to be superstars. But if you need capable starting linemen or linebackers, this is the draft for that. It's a lot of meat and potato guys you can take in the middle rounds. You can probably put out there to play, but they might not be like a future Hall of Famer. They might not have the perfect, size and speed, but the guys who are going to be able to play and start in the NFL and have a good NFL career. And for Miami, that's kind of what they need, especially on defense, at all levels, really. So that's that. And one thing in closing. Last April 2024, after the draft, once I saw all the picks, I was on this podcast and I said it a lot, that what Miami did is they had one eye in the future, because I saw all these moves coming. And I mean, I wasn't alone, honestly. When they traded a pick in round 3 this year to get Jaylen right last year, I said, this is Raheem Mostert's last year in Miami. They just picked his replacement. When they took Patrick Paul in round 2, as someone who's only an offensive tackle who cannot play guard, I said Armstead's gone. And even if he didn't take the pay cut today, rework his deal, Armstead was gone, just off of what Mike McDaniel said at 11. And I said, and this is the next one, this is the next domino to fall. When Miami took Chop Robinson in round 1, it's a sign Bradley Chubb will be gone. It's going to happen. If they cut Chubb with a post-June 1st tag label, that's $19 million they get on June 1st, which allows them to pay their entire draft class of 2025 that they're about to take here in April, and it gives them working capital for the remainder of this season. In season, if some guys get hurt and you got to sign someone in October and November, it gives them money to sign the draft class, which is going to be 10 people as of now, and also gives them money for their season. And because they just like they took Paul to replace Armstead, like they took Wright to replace Mostert, they took Chop to replace Chubb. So it's just a matter of when, not if. We'll see if I'm wrong, but it's sort of out with the old and out with their big contracts and in with the new and the young guys on the rookie deals. Grier had a plan, and now he is executing it. So I saw this coming a mile away, and I'm not surprised by any of it. And we'll see what happens here with Chubb in the coming days. So that's all for today's show. Thank you all for listening. Be sure to go to the website, DolphinsTalk.com. Follow me on all social media platforms at Dolphins Talk, whether it's Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube. We're everywhere at Dolphins Talk. Like I said, Dolphins Talk Extra. Check it out. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. $3 a month. We're giving away a Tyreek Hill mini bobblehead doll shortly. You're going to have a March Madness contest with a cool prize, and you get the private message board. You get entered in all the contests automatically, whether it's an autograph or a bobblehead or something else. And we also have bonus podcasts about the Dolphins and some not about the Dolphins. So everyone have a great Tuesday. We'll talk to you again after a while. And folks, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.